All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Beast Wars Deluxe Class Bonecrusher. Bonecrusher here turns into a bison, and it's a pretty decent bison mode. This mold was also used for Bighorn, the Beast Wars the second character in Japan. Though pretty much it's another one that's like kind of similar to the American version, but basically all the bits that are white on Bonecrusher were red on Bighorn. So I mean that's obviously more apparent in robot mode, but still it's a pretty nice looking bison mode here. I like the sort of like silver detailing that they did for the back here, and the shape of the back I think works really well. I don't really like how when these legs are kind of like pegged in properly, there is this sort of like gap up here between this panel and the legs, whereas if you untab those from those panels, you can just like bring it up like that, which I think looks a lot better. But it is technically supposed to be pegged into place like that, so they're not quite as stable this way. But I don't know, I just think that looks a little bit better to kind of hide that gap. Really, I just think that the peg should have been further up on the on this piece so that they actually properly pegged in like that. But whatever. I'll leave them pegged in for the sake of the review, but you can see the difference there. I think they look just a little bit better when they're not actually pegged into place. This guy did infamously have a pretty weird gimmick where, I mean, it's weird in both modes. It's weirder in than the bison mode, where if you take the tail back here and pull it back, this entire front section like flips forward, which also has his robot mode face, and it would shoot a missile. I don't have the missile, but it would shoot a missile out of the mouth there. But it's just super weird, especially in the bison, to have like the top part of his head and the back just like extend forward like that. Like it's kind of a satisfying mechanism, but it's a super weird gimmick as far as gimmicks go, and it definitely causes some problems in robot mode as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but it is weird. But yeah, in terms of articulation for the bison mode, you really don't have anything. Like you can kind of bend like the knees forward here at the the back legs, and they can also bend up like that. And then there's technically a hinge for the front legs here, but like you're really not doing much with that. So mostly you just kind of have him as a static brick here. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, just so you can see what he looks like with an average size modern deluxe. And for an average size modern Beast Wars deluxe, here he is with Netflix Cheetor, just so you can see what they look like together. Obviously, yeah, I mean, scales all over the place in Beast Wars anyway, but it would be nice to have kind of like a bigger version of Bonecrusher, just because like, I don't know. It'd be nice to see him at like a Voyager scale or something, just because he's kind of got like this like big beefy persona, and just like seeing a bison like super small next to a cheetah there, like even if they're not properly in scale, like seeing a bigger version of him, I think would be kind of cool. But yeah, to get into transformation here, first thing you want to do is you want to untap those panels and just flip them forward. They also latch in kind of down here like this. He does have these like sort of huge panels just hanging off as kibble in his robot mode, unfortunately, but they mostly get out of the way. But yeah, you just want to bring those forward and kind of extend the legs down like this, and then take the bottom part of the bison leg, and these joints are really, really stiff on mine, but you want to flip those forward so that this section of the leg actually flips all the way around and becomes the heel, which also flips out the robot mode foot here. Again, on this side, it's even tighter. I can try loosening those screws a little bit, but it's really, really tight on mine for whatever reason. And then for the front legs, also extremely tight. You want to flip in the little parts of the legs, which again, it's hard to get a good amount of leverage on them since they're such small parts, but you want to flip them around like that, and then take this whole section and just rotate this back to become part of the body, which is a pretty neat transformation step there. It's a neat way to actually use the limbs of the alt mode without just doing the default Beast Wars thing of making the front legs become the arms in some way, since bison legs are so small. And then the actual arms are just folded up underneath here. You can rotate them out like that, and then kind of rotate the forearms forward. Then we can take his the bison head, and that will also, here's his maximal rub sign here, so you can see where that is. And you just take the bison head, flip it down onto his chest, and then take this whole section, and it kind of double hinges up, and then this latch right here will go over this section in theory, and clip in like that, and then you can just rotate him around at the waist, and there we have Bonecrusher in his robot mode. And yeah, he's weird looking, but he's pretty cool looking. I like his vibe. I love the little accents of gold that they have on him, like for the horns and the robot mode feet especially. I feel like that's a really cool kind of foot design. The one thing that's kind of unfortunate about him is the kibbly bits, like the shoulder things, like they're a bit ugly, but they don't really get in the way that much. But he does also, just for the gimmick, have this huge thing just like jutting off of his back, which sometimes messes with stability. Really, his heels kind of work, but you can see just there's like, you have to mess with him a little bit to kind of, get his, center of balance kind of adjusted properly. And it also means, because of the gimmick, which you can still do in this mode, which still is weird, but is a little bit less weird in this mode, I feel like. It also means that he doesn't really have any head articulation, unfortunately, at all. Also, just like as a mouth design, I feel like because there's supposed to be a missile that goes in there, his face is just like really weird looking with the giant square open jaw like that. But otherwise, it's a kind of a cool design. I also find that mine always sits a little bit to the left for whatever reason. Like, it doesn't actually sit in the center. And also the latch does not work super well, because it's not really anything that it's actually latching onto up here. Like, there's no lip on the white piece, so it's kind of just like it's holding in place, but it does not take a whole lot to kind of bump it back down again, unfortunately. But yeah, in terms of articulation, like I said, nothing at the head. These are on ball joints, so you can kind of rotate them around. If you also if you like that look or whatever, you can rotate this around however you like. They're also on hinges at the back here, so you can kind of get them out of the way for the most part. But the shoulders are on ball joints, so they can rotate around before they kind of bump into these panels here. And they can also rotate out to the side. He also does have this separate joint for transformation if you want to use that as a side out to the side movement. He's got a ball joint at the elbow, which gives him a bicep swivel, and then he also has a separate hinge at the elbow. That was one thing I was always worried about before I got this guy, is I saw that the elbows were ball joints and they were facing this way, so I thought that he had like the gorilla elbows thing going on, but he does actually have a separate hinge there, so you can still rotate the hands forward and give him a proper elbow joint. He just also has this joint. So if you want him to curl his arms fully up, then you have to, kind of do the gorilla arms thing. But I also like the like red detailing on the inside of some of the panels here. It's like kind of subtle, but he has it on the inside of his legs too, which is a really nice touch. It kind of just makes him feel a little bit better, like he's got a little bit more paint, kind of adding that like fleshy detail, which I think is cool. He also has a waist cut. Hips are on ball joints, so they can go forward and back and out to the side. He doesn't have a thigh swivel at all, unfortunately. The only thigh swivel that he has is just like the range that the ball jointed hip gets him, which is not nothing. So, it works well enough. And then he's got a pretty deep knee bend there for transformation. And then the feet can tilt forward a little bit, but then you kind of bring the heel out a little bit, so the bison leg kind of sticks out of the back. And they can go forward, can go back as well, but then the heel stays in place. So it's still relatively useful, but nothing crazy there. So yeah, decent articulation. Really, the only thing that he's like really lacking is any sort of head movement, just because of how the whole like gimmick section works, which I think is probably the weakest part about this figure, is how the gimmick affects him. But otherwise, he's pretty cool. In terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Sideswipe, and here he is again with Cheetor, just so you can see what he looks like, some average modern deluxes. So you can see, he is kind of still big and beefy, so at least like the robot mode isn't like tiny, but he could still stand to be a little bit bigger. I think that getting a Voyager class new version of Bonecrusher / Bighorn would be cool, because he looks fine with deluxes. He is still big and beefy, but he could be even bigger, and then the bison mode would also scale a little bit better. But yeah, that's what he looks like with them. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. He's a fun figure. I feel like the gimmick is a little bit more trouble than it's worth, and I don't like how the head doesn't really stay latched in place. But otherwise, I think that he's pretty fun. Still looks pretty good in both modes, in my opinion, despite all the stuff that the gimmick kind of messes with. But yeah, no, it would be cool to get a new version of him, but really he's a pretty decent figure, all things considered. But yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Beast Wars Deluxe Class Bonecrusher.